Let's welcome him in because it is his favourite time of year. It's his grand final. Callum Twomey's with us. Cal, thanks for your time and thanks for coming in.
No worries, Kane. Good to have you back. It's good to chat to you again. I don't think we've chatted since the trade period, which is obviously a busy couple of weeks for everyone. But yeah, this is a busy week for everyone involved in the recruiting and list management industry and for us as well.
We just spoke to Aaron Cadman. You were listening. He's looks like a lovable character, and hopefully he can justify the Giants' I guess investment.
Investment's a big investment. I mean, they've used pick 3 and pick 12 and actually threw in a future second round pick as well to get up the board to get number 1. But they are in a different economy, I think, with some of their picks too. So they probably have a little bit more up their sleeve. And over the next couple of years, players move out or that type of thing. They've got 2 first rounders next year. Look, he's a really talented player. And I've loved seeing his development since the start of this season because, as you guys spoke about, speaking to his Rebels group ahead of the year, it was like, just keep an eye on Cadman. We think we've got something special, but he hasn't really done the forward line stuff. He went and did it and blitzed. There was a game late in the year. I was going to ask him about it on the way out. I'm pretty sure it was against Gippsland. I was at the game for Dandenong, and he was playing for the Rebels. And late in the game, his team needed a hero, for instance, and it was him. He kicked a couple of big goals. He was tough, moved up the ground. The thing I like most about him, he's not just stay at home, and I think you mentioned that. He's 30-plus goals, but he's averaged 18 disposals or something like that.
Well, if he's playing off a wing up until now, that's 2 good things. A, he's a runner.
Yeah.
And if you can't run, you can't play these days. And it's been that case for a while. But 2, there must be just enormous, I guess, inherent improvement, just simply because he hasn't played as a forward for a long period of time. And clearly he plays as a midfielder in the forward line, and that's a great grounding anyway.
Yeah, it is. And you need to be up and back, don't you, as a key forward? The best ones can do that and have to do it. To me, there's a little bit of Scotty Lucas going back a generation, but also in the current generation, it's a little bit of Charlie Curnow. That's that athleticism where he's great at his feet, but also great in the air, tough, combative, and athletic.
So Kane has got North Melbourne under the microscope at the present time. Did they err, or did they do well dropping down to have 2 picks?
History will tell that story, but I think that the players that they're grabbing in terms of Wardlaw and Sheasel will justify them doubling up. And really, as part of that mega deal, which was the Jason Horne-Francis deal, I feel like they all sort of end up with pretty good objectives met.
Where do they turn their attention to, North, in terms of the key position prospects, Cal? And there's a few texts coming through. A few North supporters would have loved to have seen Cadman there, but they're all in on this midfield and building from the midfield out.
Yeah, they are, and the Wardlaw has obviously been very strongly linked there, and even he's very popular with his peers. I mean, Aaron Cadman just said that he rated him as the best after, obviously, Ashcroft and discounting himself. But yeah, Sheasel can play midfield, but will generally start as a half forward who kicks a lot of goals, and they need some goal-kicking firepower, don't they? He's a mid-forward more than a tall forward. They'll be hoping some of the younger tall forwards do come on next year.
I think it's Charlie Comben. Didn't get a lot of exposure last year, and yet I've seen him play. He gets his hands to the ball a fair bit, needs to take those marks. And they've also got CCJ, who I'm not sure whether he's a ruckman who goes forward or a forward who goes into the ruck.
Yeah, and Nick Larkey's pretty solid option.
Well, Larkey's a star.
Yeah.
I mean, he just needs to have a good team around him.
He needs a foil, and that might be Comben. So with a better midfield, a deeper group of players, and some class as well, like Sheasel will kick goals, but he'll also create a few for his teammates.
We talk a lot about pick swaps, Cow. Not a lot of them eventuate. It's a nice added dynamic to the draft, and there's interest around it, and Essendon's are on the table, and Gold Coast potentially, and Melbourne keen to get it. Is it all just talk, and it's not actually going to happen?
There's certainly a lot more offers and discussions than there are actual deals, and that'll go right all the way through to the draft. And I think that we'll see that clubs on draft night 1 in particular will be taking every second they've got available, because there'll be some offers coming through late in the piece if a player slips or a couple of surprises happen and push one out. So it's all planning and preparation to some degree, Kane, because you want to have your ducks in a row in case player X slips through and you are able to pull the trigger really quickly, get on the phone and say, let's do that deal we spoke about. But also from a Melbourne perspective, and I heard you speak about it last night, Kane, too, I really agree with what you said. Like, be aggressive and see what you can get, and you might land one, because you just never know what another club's thinking unless you ask the question. And they've been willing to do that in the past and again this week.
So right now, what the market is telling us is that 2 first rounders at 17, 18 don't equate to picks 3, 4, or 5.
Yep.
What would they have to add if they added pick 19? Melbourne, would they get a sniff?
I don't think so. I think the clubs want to, if you're at the top end, you still want a taste of the top end and you want an extra. And that's where I look at the Bombers. They're probably going to want to pick inside the top 8 to 9 selections and probably a future first-round pick to move back from pick 4. Give us the value and the price of moving back those spots and taking the risk of pushing back, and the price has to be higher. So they still want a bite at the top end, and I'm not sure that a late first-round pick would get it done on top of what that already is.
All right, we asked for the callers to ring in if they've got a question. Peter has done just that. Peter, you're speaking to Callum Twomey. Good evening to you.
Boys, how are you?
Good.
The Bombers, I know there's a lot of talk about Essendon looking to trade out pick 5, but I think with all reports at the moment about Filippo, I think the more that I hear that Essendon be mad too if everything is what they say about Filippo compared to Sardis. Adrian has to grab Filippo because I think he can play midfield and he can go on the forward line, where Sardis I think is more an outside player, smaller body. And the last thing is, do you think Makara, the NGV and guy for the Bombers, will be still available after pick 40?
We'll go with the Munkara one first. Anthony Munkara is a member of the NGR. I think it's most likely he gets through past pick 40 and is available to the Bombers as a later pick or a rookie. I don't think there's huge expectations for him yet in an early term at the Bombers. He hasn't played a lot of footy, so he'll be coming in and building up his fitness and program through that if it goes that way. As for the Bombers at pick 4, Mateus Filippo and Elijah Sardis, very different players. Filippo, 190 centimetres. I dispute that Sardis is just an outside player. He's going to be an inside-outside hybrid. He's got the Chad Warner about him. I think that's the type of midfielder that we'll see him become. He's 186 centimetres. He's got some real power to his game. So he's a powerful inside-outside midfielder in 2 or 3 years. Filippo is 190 centimetres but plays more forward, can kick the long goal. So that they are different, and it's tight. That is a tight decision that is going to shape on what happens at picks 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Who would you take?
Well, I've ranked Elijah Sardis as the number 3 player in the draft pool.
Yep.
And I've had Mateus Filippo a little bit deeper inside the 10.
Is Filippo the most confident player you've ever spoken to? I've heard his comments and I like his confidence, but he's described himself as a mix between Bontempelli and Fife. Does he need to pull his head in a little bit, as strong as that is for an 18-year-old?
He would be right up there in terms of the most confident players that I've interviewed, and that's been a few over the last 10 years in covering the draft. He'd be right up there. I would say that's not a front. That's just the natural sort of his natural confidence and self belief in himself to be really, really good. And to a fair degree, I think clubs really like the fact he's backing himself in to be a star, and he wants to be a great. He just doesn't want to be a player. He wants to be a really good player. He wants to be a really good player quickly. I don't think he has to pull his head in. I think it's just clubs have gotten used to the personality type that he is and what that's going to mean for his footy club.
Any go-home risk factor?
I mean, I didn't think a year ago that Jason Horne-Francis would be up and going after a year. So that would have to be a part of the conversation, though, for the Bombers. You've got the kid who's from the Oakleigh Chargers versus the one from Woodville West Torrens.
Yes, I think it's an issue. I think you need to calculate it. I mean, you can back your club in, and a lot of clubs do back themselves in, but you don't have to worry about it if you take someone who's local.
Yeah, and I'm sure both of them want to go to the Bombers. They're both driven, and Elijah Sardis is just as driven.
Is he?
Yeah, he's very driven as well, and wants to be a really good player too.
Where does the stocks of the ruckman sit now in modern football and at the draft table? Most clubs sort of pick up a backup from another club that's not getting the opportunities. Who will be the first ruckman drafted, and how has their value slipped as a position?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Like, where does the first ruckman go? 2012, Brodie Grundy pick 18. 2016, Tim English was picked 19, wasn't he, for the Premiers? And it takes a certain club at the right time to want to take one. Harry Barnett will be the first ruckman drafted. He's a player out of West Adelaide's program.
First round?
That is the question. I think he'll have some interest late in the first round.
Does he justify first round?
Talent-wise, he does.
Okay.
He'd be around that mark. But then the right club's got to be ready to take a ruckman. Often it's clubs with multiple picks inside the first 20 to 25 that are most interested. I feel like he's a chance to be late first or in that sort of 25 or so mark, Kane. So he won't be playing too much senior footy next year, but I mean, speaking to the West Adelaide guys around what he's been able to do this year, there is some Brodie Grundy stuff to his game. He's athletic. He can move around the ground. There was a game earlier this year. He had 28 touches and kicked 2 goals. So, again, he can not just tap it out. He's got some ball presence around the ground.
Port Adelaide, Kane, you were looking at their list and wondering where their backup is?
Well, there's a big hole there. I think they'd be thinking Finlayson and a bit of Dixon and Lysett to get fit. Sam Hayes, I don't think he's up to it yet, albeit Ruckman can take a little bit of time to develop, but hasn't shown enough for me. So perhaps they look to draft one, but I wouldn't be drafting one but, unless there was a Luke Jackson with something special and you've got some other tricks. I'd just be picking one off from another club that's 25, 26 years of age, like Richmond have done and many other teams, Sydney have done over the journey. Tell me about Max Grzuski, Cow, because I saw his highlights on afl.com.au and he looks exciting.
Did you see his hanger?
I did.
Yeah,
I watched it live at the time and I thought, gee, there's something about that sitting on heads.
Yeah, and that was his first game back for a little bit too at that level, playing for Vic Metro. He missed a fair chunk of the season in the middle of the year with a knee injury, playing for the Oakley Chargers at the start of the season. Can play back and forward, so that's why I think clubs are looking at him, Kane, around that sort of top 20 to 30 mark of the draft. And it isn't a draft that's flushed with talls, either defenders.
Is he tall enough though? Is he that middle annoying sort of size, 189, 190, not quite tall
I think
enough.
he's about 192. He probably pushed himself up to 193 and maybe even 194. Yeah. But look, Michael Hurley was about that height. And he managed to do it pretty well. And if you can mark, and that's his trick, he's actually a really good mark above his head. Great sticky hands, intercepts, can grab it forward like we saw. That wasn't a fluke, that grab against Vic Country. So, yeah, I think he's sort of around that part of the draft and does have some interest as well. There's a few clubs looking at him there.
Are clubs still looking at forwards to turn them into defenders, or are they looking at forwards to be forwards? And I'm not talking about the absolute guns, but the second level forwards.
Yeah, I think you probably pick a player in the second level and the second round onwards and think this is a key position player, not just a key forward. And what can this guy be for us? And I think even you look at the trade and free agency period recently, Collingwood picked up Dan McStay, not looking at him as a key forward. And there's a lot of debate around what he's paid, the contract, all that. Yep. I still think you have to pay a little bit extra of the free agency tax that comes with offering a bigger deal. But he was picked as a key position player, can do things at both ends of the ground, not just as a key forward. And I think that does filter through, particularly after the first rung of the top enders. I mean, Aaron Cadman's picked as a key forward.
Nathan's been waiting patiently. He's got a question for you. Nath, welcome to you. Got a question for Cal?
Yeah, I had a quick question regarding the Saints.
Just got you on a dodgy line there, Nathan. We'll get back to you in a second. We'll just get you off Bluetooth and clear up your line. In the meantime, let's go to Melbourne and speak to David. David, you got a question for Cal?
Yeah, Cal, I was reading about a kid, I followed it last year. I'm a Port Adelaide supporter, so I'd like to keep my eye on the Adelaide kids. And there was a kid called, I think his name's Harry Lemmy from West Adelaide, a key forward, and there was massive raps on him. And then when I read the reviews this year, he'd sort of slumped quite significantly. So what are your thoughts on him? Will he be a bargain, or is he...
bargain or bust?
Yeah, that's the word.
Well,
Thanks,
Gerard, you spoke about forwards into defenders.
Yep.
That's what his sort of draft story has become this year.
Okay.
End of last year, Harry Lemmy was playing reserves footy. West Adelaide played a really good final and was one of the contenders for the number one pick leading into the season. Confidence-wise, just couldn't really get going this year. This year didn't go to plan for him at under-18 level, also for the championships for South Australia. So I think he's going to be a second half of the draft proposition. I do think a club will take him. He's 199 centimetres, but the second half of the year he started to play as a defender and got more of his confidence that way. So if he's picked as a draftee, and he will be an option, I think, and taken in that second part of the draft, it's going to be most likely as a key defender rather than a key forward.
A couple of players have bobbed up. Liam Shield is out of retirement. He's gone to the Kangaroos, and the other one, Elijah Taylor, has put himself into the draft. He was a mid-30s pick that the Swans took a few years ago before he got himself into some trouble, but he sees himself still having a future. Will he get picked up?
I would doubt it. I haven't heard anything to suggest he's on the radar. But the other part of nominating now as well means that if you nominate for the national draft now, you can also put your name up for the mid-season draft next year. So it can be sometimes a bit of a longer-term plan for some of these guys who do put their name in the mix. 900 and something draftees or potential draftees nominated. I think there'll be about 50 58, 59 picks in the end, and maybe 20-odd rookie selections, so it's not many opportunities, but he might be a train-on option for someone. Look, he played some Resi's footy this year in the Waffle, a couple of league games. Liam Shields will join North Melbourne as a reporter on afl.com.au under the pre-season supplemental rule there, so that's a good addition, I think. He's 31. He's not old. He can add some stability to that group and experience and standards and all those type of things. And obviously, the Clarko link is strong there.
Big news day out of AFL House today. So, Cow, the AFL will soon announce 4 field umpires next year. There won't be any emergency field umpires. Shed some light on this for us.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? I know, Gerard, you've got some thoughts on what this could or could not mean.
I'm not sure what it actually does to enhance it, so I'm going to watch with interest to see if people think it's an improvement on the 3.
And this has obviously been in the works, Kane, for a little bit, given that they haven't had a footy operations boss per se.
You put in for that? I've got Kane nominees being interviewed on Monday.
The invitation, the opening is there now, Kane.
No,
Can you go all Australian selector and
I'd be too aggressive. I'd make too many changes. I wouldn't trust myself. But look, we'll watch it with interest. I'm nervous that they already over-umpire games. AFL football is better when less decisions are made as opposed to more. If in doubt, don't blow the whistle.
No, I couldn't disagree with you more, to be honest, Kane. The more free kicks, the better the game.
No, I disagree. I think those ticky-touch with free kicks that we see in the ruck, well, everyone looks at each other and doesn't have a clue who the free kick's gone to. I see the soft ones, defenders on forwards, that we're all going, hang on, what was he supposed to do there? I don't think it's good for the game.
But the rules are in place. If the free kick's there, you can't ignore them, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
Though, sometimes you don't even know.
Well, there might be one or two ruck ones, but, you know, you look at the amount of free kicks, the more free kicks, the more goals. And to me, and it's only a personal opinion, I think the game opens up better and it kills congestion.
1300 736 736. You can have your say on that. But the idea around it is probably sound. It is to reduce the physical toll on umpires, and it's never been harder. They run 15 Ks, they bounce the ball. I mean, some of these umpires are older than me. They're 42, 43 years of age. It's a taxing thing to do. So the theory is sound.
Keep
to
them
reduce
in the game longer.
burden and get our best umpires umpiring more because they can physically do it now that physicality has been spread. So we'll wait and see. I'm interested in your thoughts on that. You can have your say. And also, Gil McLaughlin's departure date has finally been set, Cal.
Yeah, it has. And it'll go through now to after round 5 next year, which, of course, will be the AFL's Magic Round or whatever it's going to be called. In South Australia, I think they're still working on a working title there. But clearly, Gil McLaughlin and the AFL are keen for him to remain whilst these big-ticket items are still to be ticked off. Those being Tasmania, which has gained more stability in terms of its bid over the past couple of weeks and a couple of months. Clearly, the CBA deal is still a work in progress, and that's a big-ticket item for the players and clubs as well. And also, of course, the AFL's response to the Hawthorn racism allegations.
Yeah, I'm not sure that'll be finished by round 5, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that gives them an extra time as well to lock in the successor too, which is going to be
who's got the front row seating at the moment.
Well, you probably have a better insight into these things.
I don't go anywhere near AFL House.
I'm not sure being in there helps sometimes. Look, obviously there's contenders at Clubland which have been spoken about in terms of Brendan Gale and Tom Harley and Simon Garlick, and obviously within the AFL House community there's Andrew Dillon and Travis Old and Kylie Rogers.
Is there any chance that Brendan Gale could be brought in as general manager of football? So you've got, let's say it's Dillon gets the job. So you've got a combination of leadership that may work better than just having one, and an inexperienced from a publicity perspective or administrative perspective as the sidekick, rather than having Brendan Gale, who's got an elite track record, and Andrew Dillon.
Yeah, I think that it'd have some promise and premise because the AFL's, everyone talks about this footy operations boss role. It has changed a little bit. It changed in that when Brad Scott took it over, Steve Hocking was more a central person for that job, and then they split the role to some degree with Andrew Dillon taking over some of the rule making and Brad Scott some of the other areas.
You could go back the other way though and upgrade the role.
Yeah, you could.
You probably need to allure Brendan Gale if he was all interested, and he may not be.
Some of the names that have popped up already clearly have been Jimmy Bartell, who's obviously on the board at the Giants and has held a number of roles and positions within the AFL since his stellar career. Would someone like David Noble look at it? Obviously, AFL experience at a different number of different levels, was on track to be a CEO before taking over the coaching role. Would someone like Alan Richardson, from a footy perspective, who's seen it all from different elements, have a look at it? Would Dan Richardson within the AFL community be someone who could be an option too?
Nothing gets the people going like rules and umpiring. Just because people don't know the rules doesn't make it wrong. Gerard is correct. But this one, Gorm was paid a free kick last year in the ruck, and he asked the umpire what was it for. Max then said, "That's just ruck craft." Matt's in Cheltenham. Good evening to you, Matt.
Yeah, good evening, gents. Good discussion. Cal, so you're Chris Tochates in Kilda. Who are you taking with 9 that will become 10? You taking Cam McKenzie, or is there someone else in front of him that you'd take if they're there?
Yeah, I think it's a really good option for them in Cam McKenzie, the local lad, 188 centimetre midfielder, would be, their next Jack Steele almost, really, and he'd be ready to play footy straight away too. So he's a really good option. I think that the Saints are going to have a good choice and a player come through them. If it's Cam McKenzie, could it be Elijah Sardis? If the Bombers don't take him, could he get through a couple? Could Mateus Filippo be there as well? So I feel like one of those three is going to be in the conversation, and Jai Clark's another one. So I think one of the gun midfielders is going to be there and going to be available to the Saints, and they're looking for star factor, and the Saints have been pretty open and clear about that. So all those guys have that.
Gerard broke the story the other night that Jason Horne-Francis is going to wear the number 18, just confirmed by Port Adelaide. I reckon it's going to look all right on him, Cow, the number 18 jumper at Port.
I'm shocked to hear you think that, Kane. I'm more excited about 9 on Zach Butters. I'm Zach Butters' biggest fan, maybe alongside yourself.
What's your expectations on number 18, Kane?
I think he'll take a little bit of time to find his feet, but I just think the talent's extraordinary, and I love his competitiveness. That's what I like most about him.
It was interesting talking to Josh Carr. We had a chat to him last night, and for the first time I've heard that he has had bilateral operations on the back of his calves, had some sort of congestion syndrome or compartment syndrome. And that doesn't surprise me, because I think what we saw last year didn't sort of marry up with everything we've heard about him, and even his first early games. It just seemed as if he trailed off a fair bit.
I think he was a bit sore. Yeah, he was sore before and after games, but just played through it because, again, that competitive streak that everyone talks about and the winner within, it's like, just keep going.
But I didn't see the keep going. I reckon he was struggling with his fitness and struggling with his legs.
Will Ashcroft or Horne-Francis, if they're both available this year's draft, who would you pick?
I think Horne-Francis has the ability to change games to a bigger degree, but it's tight. We're talking, the elephant in the room here, Kane, the Walsh of this year's draft in Ashcroft versus the potential Dusty in Horne-Francis. So probably Horne-Francis, but it's marginal.
All right, now you're going to